What's up, guys? We're back with another Star Wars review, and this is a vintage collection review, and it's been a little while since I've done some of these, mostly just because I keep putting them on the back burner. But this time around, we're taking a look at some figures that have come out since Triple Force Friday, and these are some figures that I didn't think I was actually going to be getting a hold of because, well, they really weren't supposed to be out, and then they sort of came out. So today we're taking a look at three figures. We're taking a look at VC-161, we're taking a look at the Jawa, we're taking a look at VC-162, the Sith Trooper. This is the regular one, not the Amazon exclusive. And then we're taking a look at VC-163, the Shadow Trooper. So of course, you know, these guys all come on the standard vintage collection style card back, so you've got that great vintage look and feel. All of them there in the bubble and some artwork for our various figures. And then of course for the Jawa, you've actually got a shot from Episode 4. So let's do it. Let's pull these guys out and take a look. And here they are out of the package, our Sith Trooper, our Shadow Trooper, and our Jawa. So we've got kind of a wide range of figures here from various timelines and eras of Star Wars. We're going to take a look at each one of them individually, of course. We're going to start with the Jawa, see what this little guy can do, and then we're going to move into these troopers. And here he is, our little Jawa figure, and, you know, this is one that, for me personally, I've really just been looking forward to have access to Jawas again, at this scale, with more articulation, so that I'm not opening older figures to throw on my barge. I can get some newer, highly articulated Jawas that I can shove all over the sail barge and in the Jabba's playset and stuff like that. So this was well timed as far as I'm concerned. So let's see what this little guy can do. Of course, he is going to be slightly limited in articulation just because of, well, what he is. So you've got a head that's on a ball peg, and he can really kind of just bobble around and then rotate side to side. There isn't much movement, I mean, just because of the hood. The arms go all the way out. They rotate at the shoulder. Of course, you've got a single hinged and rotating elbow. You get about 90-ish degrees out of that. You do have swivels at the wrist there as well. And then you've got a rotation at the torso. You do have a little bit of movement at the crotch for the legs, but these are really just kind of, you know, space takers, really. They don't do a whole lot. They just happen to be inside the cone for his lower robe. So he does have mostly just upper articulation from the waist up, the arms, and then the head. But he's a Jawa, so it's not like you're going to have him running or doing anything like that anyway. So he does exactly what I need him to do. He can hold his weapons, he can stand there, he can look weird, he can look goofy, and it's a Jawa. There's not too much to be expected for when it comes to these little guys. And as you might expect, you know, the main draw for me when it comes to this guy is the looks, and just to be able to have some more Jawas that very much fit with other figures, fit with other Jawas from other lines, and scale correctly with other types of characters. And I think they did a pretty good job on this one. There isn't a great deal to really go on and on and on about here. He kind of is what you expect he is. He is a figure that is cloaked in a plastic robe, so it does hinder his articulation. But it works, and it definitely conveys the Jawa look and feel. It is covered in a texture, though, so it's not just flat. There is a weave pattern all over the sculpt of this robe. You've got his sash that goes down, the strap with the holster, with some buckles and some pouches, and then you've got the bandolier that's covered in pouches, which has a little bit of paint detail. It's not tons, but it breaks up the overall monotony of the brown that is the robe, so it looks pretty good. And then you've got the head sculpt on this little guy, which, I don't know, kind of a cutesy little thing. It works well enough for me. You can see those bandages in there. It's got a little bit of flair to it with the way the hood is kind of seated and shaped and just kind of falls on the head, so it's not just a generic kind of look. There is some wrinkle, some wear in that head sculpt there. And then you've got those two big, bright yellow eyes. So you really can't go wrong with this figure, I think. I really like him. I think it works really well. Again, there's not tons to talk about because it's a Jawa. But at the end of the day, it exceeds in doing what it set out to do. It's a Jawa. It looks like a Jawa. Now, as far as accessories goes, this little guy does have a couple. He has got this very, very tiny blaster pistol, which I'm sure I'm going to lose at some point, so I need to get that either sealed away or positioned quickly. But we've got a little, very monotone pistol that he can hold in either hand, although it definitely seems to fit a little better in his right hand. And then you've got the more traditional Jawa style kind of blaster here that has the big, you know, kind of almost Earth-style, antiquated type of barrel at the end of it, which has a little bit of brown paint on the end. And he can hold this guy, again, he can hold it better in his left hand than he can in his right, but if you wanted, you could get it in both hands. So you've got kind of the quintessential Jawa thing, and then you've also got this other little guy here. So you do have a couple options, especially if you get more than one, so they aren't all holding the exact same thing. And as you saw, this big guy fits in the holster just fine. And here is our Sith Trooper, so something I'm pretty familiar with for the most part, having taken a look at a number of Black Series Sith Troopers so far. So we finally got this guy in the vintage collection. I'm surprised that he was not in that first initial push and that he was pushed back to the second wave. It seems like he would have been the poster child for a trooper in that wave, but either way, here we are. So let's jump right in and see what he can do, see how he moves. He does seem to be pretty standard for a trooper. You've got a head that can look up a little bit, down really well, a lot of attitude, and then of course he can rotate. Arms go all the way out, they rotate. You've got a single hinging, rotating elbow. You've got hinges and rotation at the wrist. They are both vertical hinges on this figure. You've got your diaphragm cut, so he goes backwards, forwards, side to side, and rotates. Legs go out. You've got the hinges that then go into the crotch, so you just hinge them outwards, and then if you want to kick forward, you can rotate and then rotate that leg in there. So it does help moving him kind of all around. You've got a thigh cut, single rotating knee, and then you've got your hinge, and then you've got rotation down at those ankles. So he moves pretty well. I've got really no issues so far with posing him or getting him into any real position whatsoever. He does flow quite nicely. Just like with the Black Series figure, I am a big fan of how this guy looks. Now, I will go out on a limb again and say that the carbonized Black Series Sith Trooper is by far my favorite iteration of this guy. And I would love to see that happen in the vintage collection as well, just for the fun of it. But I really like the color palette and the design of the Sith Trooper. I love everything about the very familiar First Order Stormtrooper look with all of the new etchings and line work that's built into the armor, not to mention all of the more angular designs that break up some of the more soft curves of the First Order Stormtrooper armor. So you've got a bunch of, just like these lines that go down into the chest armor, you've got the lines that run down the thigh pads, things like that. Everything that you've seen, if you're familiar with it anyway, on the Black Series figure has been translated to this figure as well. All of those little sculpted details, all of that little stuff like on the shoulders back here, on the arms, and then that run down the legs as well, even inside the inside of the thighs there that kind of catch the light. It breaks up this sculpt a little bit, and it looks a little cooler to me. That's really all it comes down to, is I think it just looks cooler, and I like the way the light hits it. I like the way that the design kind of flows, and it's something very familiar, while at the same time being very new at this, but something that you're quite used to seeing, I guess is the best way to say it. He is, for the most part, devoid of paint, which is to be expected here. He's mostly just red cast plastic, and then of course you do have the black details where they're warranted on the joints to kind of bridge that gap. And then you do have some paint on the head sculpt as well, which is to be expected, but you've also got more of that line work that travels from the body. Again, how it catches the light. It's that same design that we're used to from the 6-inch figure that we've already seen, and it just looks menacing. It looks a little bit meaner, a more stern looking trooper, and I think they translated that design really well into 6-inch form, and I think it's flowed really well into 3 3/4 as well. Now, as far as accessories goes, this guy does have a couple, and he is an interesting one because he kind of comes into conflict with the fact that we're getting a more souped-up version of this figure as an Amazon exclusive that comes with a lot more stuff. So similar to how the SDCC Black Series Sith Trooper came with a whole mess of accessories, that figure is going to come with a lot in the vintage collection. So this guy does come with, for starters, like the standard Sith Trooper blaster, and it can peg into his thigh. So you've got this guy here. Paint apps are a little spotty on this thing. They're a little thin. Mostly it's just black, but then you've got the little red accents on the handle and then on the barrel down there as well. They're just a little thin. It's not a huge thing, and honestly you have to be really close to be paying attention to it, but it looks good otherwise. He holds it really well in his right hand because that's the trigger finger hand. And then you've got this big monster here. So this is kind of like the tripod type of gun that we've seen previously with other figures. Specifically in Black Series, it came with that First Order heavy gunner, and then the Sith Trooper SDCC figure has this as well. I'm kind of surprised that this isn't coming with the Armory pack, unless it is, and it just happens to be included here as well. I can't really remember right now. I do find that this guy does have a bit of difficulty holding this. I may just not have gotten it down right. You can definitely get in to do it and then pose him accordingly, but he does seem to be a little not easy to do when it comes to messing around with this for the first time. But either way, he can still hold it. You just have to kind of work at it, at least in my experience so far. Sculpt on it's nice, though. It's a big weapon. I mean, it's a good 3 inches, well, 2 3/4 inches roughly tall. So it goes up to the middle of his chest. Paint's pretty good. I'd say it's a little better than the blaster, just a little thicker, better, more evenly applied. It does have this guy here, this little scope or whatever this is. This does move. And yeah, I mean, it's just a big honking gun that this guy can hold, but again, it might take you a few tries to get him posed the way you want. And then last but certainly not least, we have our Shadow Trooper. Now, as much of a fan as I am of red troopers, black troopers are even more my favorite. So this guy is exactly what I was looking for, and I think we've got a really solid figure here. I mean, if you like Shadow Troopers, you're probably already interested in this guy no matter what I have to say about him. So let's take a look at how he moves around. He is very similar to the Sith Trooper, with a couple small differences. So the head can rotate, but it really can't do much more because of the fact that he's got the pauldron here. It's really just kind of sitting too close. Everything touches too much. Arms go out. They rotate at the shoulder. You've got a rotating and hinging elbow here. You've got a lateral hinge on his left hand and rotation, and you've got a vertical hinge on his right with rotation. You've got your ball peg here, and it does have a lot more movement possibilities than the Sith Trooper does. So he goes backwards really far, he goes forwards, bobble side to side, full rotation. Legs again go out at the crotch, and then they'll kick forward as well, just rotate that peg that's up in there. You've got your cut for your thigh. Knees are single jointed with rotation, and then you've got your rotation and hinges down at those ankles. So he's pretty standard. I mean, as far as Vintage Collection Troopers goes, this is kind of the norm right now, and I think he moves really well. I've had no issues with posing this guy. Again, he just does exactly what I want him to do. I love the lateral and vertical hinges. I like the change up when it comes to troopers. The only real hindrance with this guy is the fact that he can't do a lot at the head, or at the neck rather, because of the fact that that pauldron just kind of pushes everything together. As you undoubtedly already know, the main draw for me with this guy, though, is not articulation. It is, as with a number of figures lately, it's all about the looks, and it's a black trooper, so I'm already in. I'm already very much invested into the aesthetics on this guy, but I think he looks great. I think this is a really, really fantastic looking Shadow Trooper figure. I'm a big fan of just everything that's going on, despite the fact that there's really not a lot going on. So it's a Stormtrooper that is done up in black. We could pretty much call it a day there, really. But it's a nice looking figure. So you do have a few varying shades of black here. Obviously, the joints are a different finish than the armor itself. You've got a very glossy finish here. A little bit of a matte finish on the midriff here with some silver accents. You've got the pauldron with some silver accents here, and then you've got a bit of a shinier finish over here. So it's mostly just kind of a game of finishes, really, in terms of what type of black you're looking at. Obviously, the more the light hits it, the more different he'll look. But it's kind of just a standard Stormtrooper look and feel with that black coating on it. And you know, I can't begin to say how much cooler I think a black Stormtrooper is than a regular one. It's just, the cool factor on him is just ratcheted up another degree for me personally. So I'm already a big fan of this, but it's a solid looking figure. I don't really know that there's anybody that would say I'm incorrect in the fact that a black Stormtrooper just kind of exudes a nice cool factor. And then you've got the helmet up here, which has another few little changes to make it kind of stand out. Instead of having the white with the black fill and the black accents, you've got black with silver accents, which I think is equally just as cool in terms of making things different. And paint applications up here are really nice. Everything's really crisp and clean. Again, there's not a lot of paint on this figure at all, really, but what is there is small, tiny details that are really crisp and clean, and I have no problems with them. I think all the paint detail, what little there is really well applied, especially up top on the helmet. It really brings out that kind of more mean look when it comes to this type of trooper. And then as far as accessories goes, this guy comes with kind of what I would expect to be the standard, the norm, the expected set of accessories for a Shadow Trooper. So you've got your standard Stormtrooper blaster rifle here. There is 0 paint on this guy, but it's a sculpt that everybody knows at this point. It's a time-tested design for any trooper type of figure. And then, of course, you've got the longer blaster rifle. Again, no paint on this guy either. Another design that everybody's pretty much familiar with, but it looks good. This is my preferred weapon for a Shadow Trooper as well, so I'm glad it was included, even though it's kind of an expectation for it to be there, I think. I'm glad they did actually bring it to us. So you've got 2 options with this guy. If you get a few of these guys, you can at least make them look a little more different if you want, or have just an entire squad of these with these big monstrous blaster rifles. So overall, this is a really good set of figures. I'm not complete on them yet, obviously, because Leia is still part of this particular assortment. I just don't have her yet, but I couldn't wait to get into these. And I think this is a really solid group. It's nice to see kind of a wave that is full of army type of builders. You may not be army building Jawas, but definitely folks out there are going to want to get their hands on multiple Sith Troopers and multiple Shadow Troopers for sure. And both of these figures are incredibly solid. And of course, the Jawa is great as well. He's just maybe not as great as the Shadow Trooper is to me personally, but I think we've got 3 solid figures here. Sculpts are great, paint is great on all of them, despite the fact that most of them don't have a lot of paint really, but they all look exactly like they're supposed to. And paint apps or not, that's all I can ask for, is that they move well and they look like they're supposed to, and they all 3 do that quite well. So that's going to do it for this look at the Star Wars Vintage Collection Jawa, Sith Trooper, and Shadow Trooper. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.